When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have learned that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might befall him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He it was who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and knew them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Thus Joseph knew his brothers, but they did not know him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed of them. And he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the weakness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, but to buy food have your servants come. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." He said to them, "No, it is the weakness of the land that you have come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not go from this place until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain in prison, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you're honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined in your prison, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he besought us, and we would not listen. Therefore is this distress come upon us." And Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the lad? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept, and he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they added their asses. Then they loaded their asses with grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack." At this, their hearts failed them, And they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had befallen them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, that I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men, and I will deliver to you your brother, and you shall trade in the land.' As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And Jacob, their father, said to them, 'You have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. All this has come upon me.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'Slay my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you.' But he said, 'My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he only is left. If harm should befall him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol.'" Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain which they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down.' For the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' Israel said, 'Why did you treat me so ill as to tell the man that you had another brother?' They replied, 'The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, "Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?" What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" And Judah said to Israel, his father, "Send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be surety for him. Of my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice." Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags, and carry down to the man a present, a little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you, Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sack. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise. Go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So the men took the present, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin, and they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. The man did as Joseph bade him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, it is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so he may seek occasion against us and fall upon us to make slaves of us and seize our asses. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, oh, my Lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was every man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us. And we have brought other money down in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. He replied, rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money. Then he brought Simon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their asses provender, they made ready the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which they had with them, and bowed down to him to the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? They said, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. Then Joseph made haste, for his heart yearned for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out and controlled himself. He said, let food be served. They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their asses. When they had gone but a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he divines? You have done wrong in doing.' When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, 'Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the mouth of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then should we steal silver or gold from our Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it be found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves.' He said, 'Let it be as you say. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and the rest of you shall be blameless.' Then every man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and every man opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they rent their clothes, and every man loaded his ass, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, 'What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that such a man as I can indeed divine?' And Judah said, 'What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found.' But he said, 'Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father.' Then Judah went up to him and said, 'O my Lord, let your servant, I pray you, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself.' My Lord asked his servant, saying, 'Have you a father or a brother?' And we said to my Lord, 'We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age, and his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him.' Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes upon him.' We said to my Lord, 'The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die.' Then you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more.' When we went back to your servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, 'Go again, buy us a little food,' we said, 'We cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One is left. And I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring down my gray hairs and sorrow to Sheol. Now, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the lad is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the lad's life, when he sees that the lad is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now, therefore, let your servant, I pray you, remain instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the lad is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would come upon my father. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood before him, and he cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Mm-hmm. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Make haste and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. And there I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and of all that you have seen. Make haste and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers had come. It pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land. Command them also, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Give no thought to your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave festal garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 festal garments. To his father he sent as follows: 10 asses loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses loaded with grain, bread, and provision for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart fainted, for he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die.
Wow. What a story.
Uh, Bill,
Oh.
I Bill can have a job on the side anytime reading the Bible. I think this is the best ever heard and we will ever hear. No one can read the Bible like him. And it comes from his voice, certainly. It comes from understanding, and you have our compliments.
Thank you.
He's Kentucky's very own David Suchet.
Oh, thank you.
Well, so this elaborate plan was a test that Joseph gave his brothers to see if they had really changed. If they had really changed in their, and that's kind of a side story here, but we see by the evidence of their actions, and especially Judah, who was one of the worst ones. You know, the whole story of Judah. He had a few experiences that caused him to change for the better. But you do wonder how much of this Joseph planned in advance, because there's a lot of stuff here, or if he planned as soon as he saw his brothers. So there's a lot of things here that seem very, and Joseph was a planner. Even the whole little detail of like, we're eating at noon. Said that twice. Um, we might touch on that a little bit, and just like these little things. There's so much here, just from little things like the silver and the silver cup, and all of that. But we've been really focusing on how God was with Joseph and how God was helping Joseph, like especially the past couple of discussions. And we'll certainly talk about that some this time, but the focus today is also more zooming out. How does this fit into God's big plan? This story of Joseph takes the last third of the book of Genesis, a good chunk of it. There's more to this than just a nice story that made didn't they make a play in a movie? Coat of Many Colors. I mean,
Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat. I mean, it's definitely a made for, it's definitely an entertaining story, and it has a lot. I mean, you really have everything in the story, as we'll see, but the focus really is in chapter 45, where Joseph mentions, we are. Joseph mentions, and I have that. Oh yeah, he mentions 3 different times. That he's not angry with his brothers. He's essentially, I want to say he's forgiven them, but he's come to an understanding that this was all part of God's plan, and he says, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Then later he says, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on the earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. And then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. So we see the change in Joseph also a little bit. He's not bitter towards his brothers. He realizes, but he still needed to make sure, or at least run them through these tests that we see. So before we talk about the whole, there are a lot of parallels here with God's redemption story. And this is especially relevant, of course, with Holy Week coming up, and God sending His Son for our salvation, and but there are a lot of parallels there. But I wanted to kind of go through just quickly, but maybe not too quickly, but just kind of touch on a few things, because there are a few parts here that I do have some questions, and I'll be calling on our Egypt expert once again to give us some insight into a couple of things. So Joseph says, right here, when his brothers didn't recognize him right at the beginning in 42, he even tells them, under the guise of accusing them of being spies, he says, you will be tested. So he wasn't kidding. He really tested them. And it got to the point, of course, where Judah volunteers to take the place of Benjamin. which again shows this change of heart that his brothers have had over the years, and they acknowledge what they did to Joseph. They repented of that. Yeah, I do want something that might not get a lot of press here is Israel or Jacob, formerly known as Jacob. He makes this comment when they return. When they return with the silver in their sacks, and Simeon, of course, is not with them. And he's talking. Keep in mind, he's talking to his sons, which makes this even more an interesting comment to make. You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. Now you want to take Benjamin. This line here, everything is against me. What do we touched on Israel's story, Jacob's story a little while back, and his kind of the person that he was, and his striving, kind of constant striving with Laban, his brother-in-law, and trying to always outmaneuver and outwit, his brother Esau and then Laban. What do we make of Joseph's attitude here? Because he's very, understandably he's distraught, but he's very emotional, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Maybe even to an extreme. He doesn't even let them go back at first until it gets
Hungry again.
Yeah, until they're about to, die of hunger. Let them go back. Does this say anything about his character or his faith or how he, because surely he remembers the promises he received from God. He was the guy that saw the angels coming up and down on the ladder, and
well, maybe
Yep.
maybe his gut reaction wasn't quite what he maybe he thought he had worked everything out, but then when actually faced with his brothers in front of him, it took him a few days to get over or to think things through and be sure.
Oh yeah, for Joseph, definitely. Jacob, though, I just you're not really told, but you do kind of wonder if he was putting his, Joseph, or a lot of names here. Jacob.
Yeah.
Jacob / Israel, the father.
Oh,
He kind of struggled with making idols out of different things. He made an idol out of Rachel. He was really attached to his wife Rachel, which caused a lot of family strife. Yeah. You could say he was maybe attached a little too much to being the number one, trying to outdo Esau in the beginning there. And then now, Rachel's two sons that she bore to him, Benjamin and Joseph, you see his attachment to them, and his life is bound, other sons say his life is bound up in the life of Benjamin.
About Jacob, first I wonder, is it the exactly same meaning in other translations? Or, to say all my children will be gone and I will go down to my grave because he lost the 3 of them out of 12. mean, what does it say in other translation? I will look it in the Arabic when we finish. But the other thing about him that came to my mind again for the first time tonight is Jacob's life, the way he tricked his brother to take the firstborn right. Just everything kind of not tricky, but yeah, I mean, he tricked his brother. I mean, he is not really a simple man, and it caught up with him. Uh, so really, that came to my mind. Um, but with Joseph, how did he plot all that right away? I mean, uh, even if it takes, for sure, it took him few days, but you cannot plot all that really tight story, to get his brother. So, what do you all think about Jacob first?
Well, as far as, well, I do think Jacob, the father, struggled with putting he really invests his whole sense of hope and worth and everything in these two sons out of the 12. And you can kind of see his life as, especially even when he goes to talk to Pharaoh later on, which we haven't mentioned here in this reading, but Pharaoh asks him when the Joseph's father Jacob comes before him, how old are you?
Mm.
He gives the answer, and he gives it in a way that's like, the years of my years have been full of trouble, and he goes on to say something like that.
Mhm.
So really, his life he never really had peace. Even though you kind of look at his life, and he had all these offspring, he had successful kids, he had, he didn't.
He had a good life.
He had a pretty good life. Yeah, I mean, he had wealth, he had a lot of, but still he had no peace. Joseph, on the other hand, his son Joseph, went through a lot being sold as a slave, sure, but really turned into, I mean, you really get a different picture of who he is and his faith. Joseph's faith, especially when he talks about, God is doing all of this. And I get the feeling that he doesn't say this, but so this is kind of going out on a limb, but you do wonder if God revealed to him, and well, I mean, he knows from his dreams that someday his brothers would come before him. So maybe he still had that faith that would happen. And he could have been thinking about how he was going to, especially when he rose to the position that he was in, how he was going to deal with that when they came along. And they finally did, and he put him in custody for 3 days, and of course, yeah, he had those 3 days. But I would think it would be when he sees people coming from all over to buy grain, he would have thought that brothers would come along.
I agree with you there. As soon as he acquired the position that he did, I think that he felt as if he would see his brothers again. It would have been brought to his remembrance the dreams of his youth. I don't think it was important to him. Because even though it was in his youth, it was important to him. Because he was a cocky snot. But as he had matured and gone through the stint in prison, gone through the stuff he did with his brothers and gone through the stint in prison and then was released, he was thankful. He was a mature, thankful man for what had happened to him. And as he remembered that dream, it did not matter that his brothers were going to bow down to him. And then when finally they did show up,
Yeah. You remember
he knew what was going to happen. Yeah. It just didn't matter to him anymore.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the prison. That whole experience being, sold as a slave and then having to stay in the prison for years. That really forced him to grow up. I mean, forced him to to rely on God, to rely on not just being his dad's favorite kid and the guy that got the fancy coat with the fancy sleeves or the many colors, but it also kind of mirrors this famine. Now this famine, not to make light of 7-year famine, is a really serious thing, especially one that went across probably most of the known world at that time, at least around the area of the Mediterranean or Middle East. If you think about it, this hardship, this famine that God brings, really is the forcing mechanism for all these events to happen. It's what made his brothers get up and go. It's what finally motivated Jacob/Israel to give his son Benjamin, to let his son Benjamin go. Famine kept on, and the famine persisted, and it got to a point where there was no other option. They had to go in order to be saved. They had to go and go to Joseph.
The only thing about that, then really when he was in prison, he would have also predicted that he will get out of prison and his position will change, so his brother will come to him. I mean, likelihood or not, that's just I don't know how, unless if he had something divine in him. But when you were reading, if I had seen that story at the point when Joseph just in prison, any normal person would have never ever predicted that He will go through prison for 13 years. Then he will get out. Then he will so and so and become the prime minister in Egypt. And they will come to him from all around the country too. So just it will be unbelievable story for anyone even to imagine. So for to see all that happening and not materializing, just surprising at every turn, and the plot and so on, just that's what made it for all time. That to me, really, just if I don't see the end, I should not judge just by what I see, because who knows? So
I mean, 100%. I mean, I agree that surely he didn't know the
mhm.
details, of how things were going to happen, but he had a faith that God would somehow work things out. I mean, he probably didn't even the thought of becoming the prime minister of Egypt, or, being a guy in charge and how everything happened. And I'm sure he could have not even conceived of something like that. But it's almost like, being open to, whatever God's gonna do in your life. And it did seem like he knew the dreams that he had were something, but he didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. But in hindsight, it's kind of interesting. In hindsight, you realize, like, oh yeah, that dream was pointing to this.
I think that is some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's a difficult question, I think, for all of us, since we don't see dreams.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in the next problem we have? Excuse me. Because most of the people do not see dreams, and then either they rely on their faith or not without uh, premonition. So that's a tough spot, really, to be.
I think it's important, uh, you know, I think it's important to remember that we can't grasp God's timing. I think that's one reason we are given so many significant stories of God's extreme timing in the Bible. You have like this one, like Abraham, like Moses.
They were really old by the time.
There's such a long period of time often that God may take to prepare us or to prepare circumstances, or the preparations that need to occur in both society and us for whatever it is that God needs for us to do what God wants us to do. And, really, you look at what it is with Joseph, and this is really, all in all, a pretty short time frame.
Yeah.
You look at Abraham, he's 100 years old. Yeah. Moses is 80 before he even gets started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of timing, and we'll come back to this here shortly, right at the end. But this is thousands of years before. Well, 2,000 years, 3,000 years before Christ. Yeah, and all these events. Well, we'll talk about this right now. All these events are pointing to what God's going to do through sending His Son. There's a lot of things in this story, a lot of the big themes. I will have a few questions about some details here as we close, but the big themes here, you have a whole story of transgressions and redemption, transformation with the brothers, Judah's story, and the horrible thing they did to Joseph, and you have the father sending his Joseph was his son, essentially. I mean, the other sons were his sons. So Joseph was, the father lost him, but he did end up actually having to willingly send his son Benjamin with them, so that so you have that. You have the son Joseph suffering in order to going through this period of suffering and humiliation in order to become the one who could save many. You have the son here, Joseph again, being made ruler. So you kind of have that. He's essentially sitting at the right hand of Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And then finally, at the end of the story, this happens in the next chapter when they all come back, but you see that they are all the families all being gathered back together
70s.
through the work of the Son. So it's really an interesting. I mean, it's you kind of tell the whole gospel through the story of Joseph.
Yes.
And there probably have been many people who've told it better than that, but you see those themes there, or related, I guess, better than I.
Well, it's and we see just a little flash of that, in the flip of names. There in 42, we see just a couple of times in what we had in today's reading, where it flips from calling him Jacob or Yaakov and to Israel.
Oh yeah.
There at the very beginning, in verse 1, he's called Jacob, and there in verse 5, he's called Israel. There's a significance in him being called those different names, because he's the nation in verse 5.
Yeah.
He's just the man with a bunch of sons. He's just the family in verse 1.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we see that difference in relationship pictured as we see the difference in the use of names.
I can't believe I didn't see that. I know he got the name, but it's that they used the name Jacob there at the beginning. I guess I just had this filter in my mind that Jacob, Israel, they're interchangeable. That I was, but yeah, they do. He is just called Jacob right out of at the beginning here.
I've been good for something tonight.
Yeah, I did. It's like, how did I not see that? Yeah.
Because they do become, they become Israel after that time in Egypt.
Yeah.
At that point when they went to get seeds from him and they ended moving into Egypt and living with him, sounded, without Joseph saying 5 more years, sounded like it took 5 6 years already in the famine. Apparently all this happened in the first 2 years of famine and they had 5 more years. That shows how bad it was, that in 2 years people up north of Egypt were about to die. So in 5 more years, certainly everyone will be dead without storing grains in Egypt. So that's a foresight really from Joseph to say that God meant for all this to happen, so I can end up being here and do so and so and so and save so many people, which really just hard to believe if we to predict for sure.
And I'm kind of reminded by that of just they could have resisted going back to Joseph and tried to kind of scrape by. But if you think about, 5 years,
5 more years.
a family like that, I mean, you can't,
Yeah.
There's no way. It's almost like us trying to make ourselves acceptable to God by doing a bunch of good works. Kind of a similar. In this case, their only hope of salvation was to go back to Joseph and for Israel to send his son Benjamin. And I mean, you have kind of something similar with Abraham being willing to. He didn't sacrifice Isaac, that was a test, but that's another thing. But but this was just, it was so apparent and so dire. The need was so great that this was the only way, that they could all be saved.
Well, as they were, after they had gone back the first time, they had no idea how long the famine had yet to go.
Oh yeah.
They knew they were hungry then.
Yeah.
But they had no idea that, the famine was just really getting going.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a lot of livestock that they could have gone through, but
But what would the livestock have eaten?
Yeah.
What they could have gone through.
yeah, I mean, they would have,
You'd have to make a lot of jerky.
yeah. I don't know that.
Yeah, we're not told what kind of we're not told if it was a drought or if it was some kind of pestilence or what.
Well, it was famines. It would have been a drought.
Or like something like the Irish potato famine, where it was like mold growing on. The crops just were dying. They didn't know.
Well, there wasn't any plowing.
Or,
there wasn't any plowing.
Yeah.
Or planting, so it was drought.
Had to be. Yeah, the ground was so dry.
Uh,
And if it was dry in Egypt, that says, well, I mean, it is dry in Egypt, but they can weather a lot of these and plow even if there is, even though it is dry, is because the Nile is one of the most reliable. It floods at reliable times, and they weren't really dependent on it
I read
raining
that-
there,
I read that it was about 200 miles
around
from
Egypt.
Hebron to Egypt. Why did all 10 brothers have to go, leaving none at home to
That's
take
a
care
good
of family?
question. Yeah.
Well, left them at home.
Well, the father did say, "Why do you all stand around looking at each other?"
Yeah, I guess we all have to go.
Well, I think it was
Maybe for protection. I don't know.
for
Safety.
protection and protection in a number of beasts to carry enough
Oh
enough
yeah.
provisions back
Yeah.
to last.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That's true. And you wouldn't want to just send one guy with a bunch of beasts because he could get
Waylaid.
waylaid. Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
because you see, one or two people with a caravan of 30 camels coming across they're going to be toast.
It's not an easy road either, is it?
Uh,
Going into Egypt, I don't think, unless you go along the sea. But even then,
I think
it's a pretty rough
anybody,
way to hoe.
I think people in that day and age would have been easy pickings for, at that time, they wouldn't have been called highwaymen, but I think, robbers would have certainly, even 10 people would have, it would have taken all 10 of them to protect the caravan coming back.
But I mean, that is a good question that actually reveals, a lot. That they had to send 10, plus probably some servants, I would think too. We're not told that, but at least 10 of the brothers to come back with grain, because it was a large family, 70 people.
Yeah.
So that details like that, and it's hard to point out all of them, at the time that we have and length of this narrative. But I do have a few questions that just kind of come to me just reading this, and so I know I tried to look into the whole eating at the eating at noon thing. I tried to look into the significance of that, and apparently it's that culture. It's like the eating in the main meal in the middle of the day was like what the royalty did, because you're not working. It was kind of the nobility. They would have a lavish meal in the middle of the day. But the whole eating at noon, I mean, it does kind of point to his planning of this, Joseph's planning of this. But a question I have for if there be any people with any association with Egypt among us, Joseph is the ruler, essentially. He's kind of like Pharaoh. So he was well respected and has an Egyptian wife. Yet the servants in his household or anybody, he's eating by himself. And it says that he hasn't revealed himself as being a Hebrew yet, with his brothers there. You wonder, this is before he reveals himself to his brothers. He's serving this meal to them, and it makes it a point to mention that he's eating by himself. And it says it is detestable for Egyptians to eat with Hebrews.
I thought maybe they knew Egyptians and Pharaohs, they knew that he is Hebrew already before, uh, when he even explained the dreams.
Yeah.
That there is a Hebrew in prison who can explain dreams, so it was known about him. And that's why he was raised in his position and so on, but still he is a Hebrew, they don't eat with him. And actually, when his family came, also that was in the plan that they don't mingle with the Egyptian and just eat with them. No, they will have their own property and so on.
But he didn't give it away by eating with his brother.
No. Yeah.
It's
But
over
his
there.
position was so high that maybe he did not care what do the other Egyptians think about him. You know, just giving them a fat cow and giving them portion and eating with them. But you are right. Pharaoh, actually, I am impressed with him. When Joseph came out of prison, he gave him a high position. He gave him one of the priest's daughters, maybe, to marry, a snake and so on. And then when he heard about his father and family alive, he was so gracious. He said, "Oh, send him the best caravan to get them in and let them come. I will give them the best things in Egypt." Just so gracious. And I think it's emotional more than planning, because just he impressed me as an emotional guy too. That's Pharaoh.
You know, I think about this Pharaoh, and then
Other one.
I have to think about the Pharaoh relatively soon to come, but
Yeah.
a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph.
Exactly. That impressed idea that it's not just Pharaoh, it's just they were so appreciative to Joseph that he saved the Egyptians, and actually he will bring a lot of wealth to Egypt by selling grains. So they
Yeah,
appreciated him even if he is a Hebrew.
But it's still interesting then that they even hundreds of years later, they kind of remain, even though they're in the land, they kind of remain a separate group. You know, like Joseph is still, even though he has an Egyptian wife and he's
Yeah.
the president, you know, he's essentially the president of you know, the guy with the authority. He still is kind of, well, but he's not.
yeah,
There's
but
still this acknowledgement that, well, we're still different. I don't know.
well,
odd.
after he aged out and that Pharaoh was
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah, I mean,
that
they had
would
a
have
close
he would
relationship.
have that whole thing would have been
Kinda
he
gone
would have
by the
been over.
wayside, yeah.
And he would have his family would have just become Hebrew.
Well, and it is mentioned later on that Joseph requests that they live in Goshen because they're
Yeah.
shepherds.
Exactly.
So that could be part of it, that, you know, the Egyptians weren't shepherds, and
Mhm.
these guys were shepherds from out in the
That's what Joseph planned.
out of
Exactly.
Canaan.
Still, the most impressive point, really, I think, is how gracious was Joseph to his brothers. Instead of saying, now let's play with them, let's take revenge. No, he was sincerely, sincerely loving and forgiving, and just so impressive to me.
I mean, you could tell that he really was happy to see them,
Yeah.
um, especially his brother Benjamin. And that this, you know, on the surface, if you read this, you might think he was trying to have some fun, making them, you know, causing them all this,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah.
stress. But really it was to see if they would be, if they had changed. Really, and they did, you know, they, they were willing to. Oh well, they
Well,
didn't. He was listening, but they essentially repented of what they acknowledged what they did was wrong.
also,
Yeah.
I also noted during that it wasn't just his brother's desire to do what I think we would agree was the right thing, as far as like, the money and just being honest and
Yeah.
etc.
Go back and take.
But it was also their fear of reprisal and the fear of the consequences if they didn't. So maybe not necessarily to take away from the observation that they changed, but I did want to add that asterisk in there that,
It's the right thing to do.
it was the right thing to do, but also they did the right thing also because of fear of consequences, which is an interesting observation to me.
Well, that is certainly true, and even in the midst of that, they kind of acknowledge, like, well, the reason this is probably happening to us is God's probably punishing us for throwing our brother in a pit and selling him off.
Yeah.
We're getting what we deserve. But it's interesting. It's kind of like, Joseph knew they were being genuine because they didn't know that it was him at that point. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a good, I'm sure if he had told them like then, like, hey, I'm Joseph, like, oh, we're sorry, we threw you in the pit, but then he wouldn't know necessarily if they were just saying that to
Suck up.
suck up, right? So
Yeah.
So at that point, he was out. He was in Egypt for 20 years, 20 something years, but he was still Hebrew from inside. So he lives between the Egyptian. He is married to Egyptian, and Egypt is the country that really added so much to him, to his life and wealth and value. And yet he was all Hebrew from inside, so loyal to his brothers and father and descendants, and just it's another layer of Joseph to know, I guess.
yeah, for sure. Um, and
It's amazing that his father, that it's amazing that Joseph had learned so much about the God of his father in the years that he had before he uh, was sold into Egypt. Because he would have needed a relatively strong faith to build upon while he was in jail.
Yeah, it's
That would have been difficult to build upon nothing.
yeah, what a dream.
Yeah.
he said the words that really still we are reading it maybe 4,000 years later, that you try to hurt me, but God used it to reverse it and for the well-being of so many people. So it's just something to, maybe the ultimate thing to remember from that story.
Yeah, and there's really not much. I mean, that really says it all. I mean, and he says it says it that exact thing 3 times right at the end here, telling his brother, reassuring his brothers, that this, even though they meant to harm him, this was all part of God's plan, and that's, I think, a good example for us. Kind of see, not to be just like shrug off, like, well, yeah, people can just do whatever to me and I don't care about it, but to kind of view your life in that way, that when you go through different things, that there's a greater purpose, and that God can even turn evil things and things that are done to you that aren't good into good. And sometimes it might take some time. I mean, Joseph, it certainly took some time, because he was 13 when he was sold, and he was 40 years old by the time his brothers show up. He gets to say these words. So I'm not even 40 yet.
It's true.
Feels like a long time ago that I was that.
Time flies when we're having fun.
And to kind of end on a fun note, this verse just made me I just laugh when I read, every time I read this. It might be like unintentional humor worked into the story, but when his brothers were saying, so it says, now the men were frightened when they were taken. So it's when they were taken to the house, and they had this. They were trying to explain.
Yeah.
They said he wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys.
Yeah.
True.
Like, well. Well, anyway, and there was another verse in there that I think there's something that was said, but anyway, that kind of. Oh, it's in Jonah, the book of Jonah ends with that. I promise we'll end here, but I just where is Jonah? It's in here. The first one to find it.
Nice. I don't
The last chapter of Jonah.
suppose after Proverbs and all that, towards
Yeah,
the end of the
it's
Old Testament.
it's a tiny book.
Yeah.
The last chapter of Jonah.
Yeah, it's like Jonah, or God's telling
Jonah
Jonah, like, there are a lot of people that.
It's right before Micah and right after Obadiah.
Two other small books.
I think part of his brothers comment over and over that I think there is some maybe guilt feeling about what they did to Joseph, and just when you do something wrong and you get away with it, you wonder if it will chase you 5 years later, 20 years later. You don't know. You keep wondering about it. So that's maybe uh, it did not come to their mind, maybe that straight, or that direct relationship, but it's part of their personality. Just they take everything in a paranoid, negative outcome.
They definitely, it definitely seems like they had this hanging over them. They had this sense of something terrible is going to befall them for what they did. Well, I mean, they do get kind of released from that. I mean, well, even later though, like after their father died, they're still worried Joseph's gonna come after them. He has to reassure them that he's not gonna take revenge. That it's, again, it's part of God did this, and well, you did what you did, but God used it. But,
So maybe it's
and
not. So maybe it's not worth it to do something, evil, because even if you can get away with it, you will be paranoid, looking behind your head, really, just at every turn.
certainly, I mean, feeling guilty about it. I mean, certainly, but sin as a way of
Well, if it doesn't even if it didn't catch up with you here, it's gonna catch up.
Exactly.
yeah,
Not gonna get away with
you still need forgiveness. Well, speaking of
That
God's
and
grace,
well,
go
I thought going along with that, I was still thinking about what I had said earlier about the consequences thing. And it kind of occurs to me that, the Bible in general, but also this story, doesn't hold those brothers in contempt for, recognizing the consequences and using that as a source of accountability, right? It doesn't hold or look down on necessarily like an internal sense of accountability from recognition of the consequences, as opposed to simply doing necessarily the right thing based on it being the right thing. Now, ideally, maybe you should, right? But kind of, I would say Christianity, the Bible, and the story does seem to justify some level of doing the right thing through a sense of consequence, all right? In the existence of hell. Uh, and I think that I can't speak of anyone else necessarily, but I can speak for myself. I look at my motivations for doing things and making decisions,
Mhm.
and I recognize that sometimes I do what might be the more right thing occasionally. I try to do it whatever, enough dissembling. Um, Sometimes I do what is considered the right thing because of a fear of consequence. And, should we think less of ourselves for that? Yes or no? I think part of the answer here is given by the fact or what I just stated. So, anyway.
Well, if it's only for fear of the consequence, I think that certainly.
Yeah, if you would like,
If there
there
wasn't
is some sense of like, okay, well, that's the consequences. Okay, that makes the decision easier, to do the right thing because I know should do one thing or the other, but maybe you're fighting yourself on it and you're like, oh, well, if I speed, I'll just use that easy example. If I, speed excessively or something, there's possibility of tickets. So also I won't do that because of that. But
Exactly.
if you would do it without the consequence, maybe that's a different conversation.
well, you could also have it, on your conscience to desire to drive safely for your safety and those around you. But also,
Right.
of course, you wouldn't want to see people whizzing past you at 300 miles an well, not that they'd be driving 300 miles an hour, but that'd be pretty fast.
Well, I would actually quite enjoy that, but anyway,
like
going to the
hey,
Autobahn would be pretty cool.
they're just getting away with that. But if it just to kind of, I guess this is an unplanned ending to this, but in the book of Jonah, you have these people who were confronted by the prophet Jonah. The Ninevites were a wicked. I think they were in the Syrian city. They were known for anyway, just being not good people. I'll just leave it at that. God sends Jonah there to say, the city's going to be destroyed because, God, God's going to destroy the city because of your sinfulness. And they repent, they honestly and full-heartedly repent of their ways, and they fast, and they, so then God relents, and then and doesn't destroy the city. But then Jonah is mad that God showed them mercy. So Jonah's kind of out there sulking and like watching the city, waiting for it to fire to come down, Sodom and Gomorrah. And then God says to him, that basically that he cares about, all the peoples, and that he showed them mercy and grace. But it's the very last verse of the book of Jonah is like, should I not, this is God saying to Jonah, should I not pity Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle. That one's the book of Jonah.
They really looked highly upon their cattle and donkeys.
They did. The beasts. There's a proverb. Godly person looks after his animal, or something like that.
That's something, we see that mentioned here, and it kind of makes me think that we're going to see our animals somehow in heaven. They're I just have to think that there's going to be a presence for
Our beasts.
those entities who have been our pets in this lifetime. I don't know what they are. They're certainly not
Human.
Thank you. They're certainly not human,
Yeah,
but
I understand what you mean.
but they're certainly entities that show us great affection and loyalty, and I just have to believe there's some continuing
I don't hear him anymore.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't. I really believe that. I believe that if you read the book of Revelation, there are animals in heaven. And if you tell me, so why do you think your dog will be in heaven? Because he was better than me. He's still better than us. I mean, the way they have unconditional love, it's unhuman also. I mean, I don't know any human who does that. So there is a reason to believe that, and but they are not human. I mean, God did not breathe in His breath into them. So they are different entities, the way Bill said. Well, I don't know where did they go, but we have to leave. So good night from here, Nathaniel. Good morning to you.
Good night. I
And
mean, yes. Thank you.
just if they come back, tell them that we left. What time do you have there? Whatever.
Oh, I guess the laptop maybe died.
Maybe.
It is 11 a.m. here.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's 10 p.m. here.
Yep. Well,
Have a good day, and we are glad that you are home.
thank you. Me too. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Let's try it again.
Good night.
Good night.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
All right, now say it.
And prosper.
Live long. Now we got two of those in this one. So
Live long
all
and
right.
prosper.